Hi everyone, Ben here from the Rank Podcast. Today I'm joined with Mark Daoust from Quiet Light Brokerage. Super happy and excited for this episode. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
So let me just share a funny story of how I actually learned about Quiet Light Brokerage. For anyone listening, it's basically one of the largest, I believe, brokerages for online businesses out there. And I listened to Flipping Websites podcast, and there was this story that Mark talked about how he actually sold the site in 2004, maybe 2005, and how he later purchased it back once again. So this will be something that we'll be covering along with a ton of other golden nuggets. So yeah, Mark, if you can just do a little bit of an introduction into how you got started, what you do, that would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk about it and love taking these walks down memory lane. I think it's good for us, right? We get to see what we've done over the years and instead of just focusing on today. But yeah, I'm the founder of Quiet Light Brokerage. We've been around since 2007 is when we really had our first full year of operation. And we help sell people's online businesses. We work primarily with businesses that have been established for a while and would sell from 250,000 all the way up to $25 million in value. I got into this. People ask me all the time, "How did you get into this? How did you start doing this?" And it was really one of those things that you stumble into a little bit, and part of it is that story that you referenced or alluded to. I had a content site, made a lot of money through affiliate marketing, and it was really just kind of that sort of a play, right? Content, newsletter driven business, and I sold that through an advisor, and found that the process was one that could be improved upon. So I always had it in the back of my mind, but then a really good friend of mine who had a web hosting business saw me sell my business and decided he wanted to sell his. So he was my first client, and I helped him sell his business when, frankly, I didn't have any business doing that. But it worked out really well. He got a great price, and looking back on it, frankly, he got a really good price. We did a really good job for him, and so that was the origins of Quiet Light. We're obviously different now. We've done hundreds upon hundreds of deals. This year alone, we're going to do over $100 million in transactions for our clients. So learned a lot of lessons on the way, and been able to recruit just an absolute all-star team. So that's a quick introduction.
Amazing, amazing. Cool. Maybe let's just start with how you got into affiliate marketing or online business in general with the first business. What year was that?
Oh
how you get
man.
how you got
All right.
started?
So how did I get started? I got fired from my job. That's how I got started. So I worked for right out of college. I worked for an internet company out in Baltimore, Maryland, and this was the year 2000. So I graduated college in 2000. And for anyone who remembers or has studied just recent history, you'll know that there was an internet bust in the year 2000, and that hit us really hard. Um, and so I was with a internet company that was essentially distressed for several years. Um, and then after 2 years, due to corporate politics and everything else that goes on with working, for someone else, and frankly, being an entrepreneur and not knowing how to mind my tongue about what I saw as being wrong with the company, I was let go, and so that pushed me firmly in the world of entrepreneurship. At the time, I called it being professionally unemployed. How can you find ways to not be employed but still make money? And so I did a lot of little things, on the side to make money. I did pick up a couple of jobs, but that's really where I sort of started. And like many of your listeners, probably, I had a lot of projects, and one of the ones that I had was a content site for affiliate marketers for we just called them webmasters at the time. Anyone with an online business that they were trying to start up. So we addressed topics of SEO. We talked about PPC. We talked about code development and even tax strategy. It was kind of a wide ranging area. And I was able to build that up to 220,000 subscribers, uh, and really lived on the email side of that business. Which is great. And that was the first business that I really started had any sort of staying power to it. It existed for many many years, and sold that, which is how I got into the brokerage field later on. Is going through that process personally of selling a business, and I'd previously also bought a business while I had this content site as well.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, um, that's the nature of it, right? You're an entrepreneur yourself. You know
Yeah,
the
yeah,
idea of
yeah,
having
yeah,
you have
yeah,
all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah.
projects all the time, right? And a few of them eventually hit.
Of course, it's like you have like Matt Diggity, if you know him, like one of the very big players in the affiliate marketing. He has this concept that he talks about. He has like 10 different trees planted all the time, and just he keeps on watering them, and then suddenly one will just take off, and then another, and then another. As long as you just keep on planting and watering them, sooner or later you will hit some luck. But yeah, that's a cool story. It's a sitereference.com, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. Yep, sitereference.com. And I don't
Mhm.
believe it exists anymore. I think it's gone
I believe it's on
forever.
sale. It's on sale for $5,000, if I
Oh,
remember correctly.
I could buy
I
it
was checking
again.
a third time.
A third time. Yeah, no, it was site reference with a hyphen in the middle of it because again in 2000 2002 there wasn't really proven this is the best way to register a domain. So a lot of domains had hyphens in them. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. It's for sale for $5,000. There we go. Pick it up for a bargain.
So if I understood correctly, it was like a directory of some sort, just listing online businesses, but also writing like articles, guides, things like that.
So there was actually two sites, right? So before that, there was Tower Search. Now, before AdWords became the dominant PPC player in the space, there was Go.com. They were the first PPC player that was out there, or cost per click advertising, and they were just a search engine. Their whole concept was, if you're willing to pay for it, you're probably worth visiting, right? So the model was super simple. You want to rank number one for web hosting, be willing to pay the most for the term web hosting. So then when somebody came along and typed in web hosting and clicked on it, that you would pay, $5, $10, $25, whatever it got bid up to. So there was a lot of PPC search engines that started up at the time. And I looked at that and thought, this gets prohibitively expensive for the new guy, right? So I was living in the web hosting world at the time. And web hosting during the day, during the busy hours, would spike up to $60 a click. It was really difficult for anyone new to be able to finance that, and a lot of advertisers were just defensive spending. Right, we got to spend this so that nobody else can get in here. We're not going to make money on these, but we're not going to lose money. It's what we can spend. So I looked at that and said, well, what if I change this into a subscription model and said, you want to bid on web hosting? Go ahead, pay me $99 per month. And well, I'm just going to rotate you in with everyone else that is bidding on this term, and it worked well. At the day that I launched, I got 100 new clients day one, and thousands upon thousands of keywords submitted, and it was doing really really well until I made a really bad mistake. I was the developer, I was the designer, I was the sales guy, I was the content guy. I made a really bad mistake from the development standpoint and accidentally deleted my entire keyword database. So these
Hmm.
people who had submitted, thousands of keywords, spent some time optimizing their listings, was just gone. And so I completely messed up. And so I had to send out an email to people saying, I'm sorry, this has been deleted. And so next thing that happened is I got chargebacks like crazy. I mean, my chargeback rate was like 70%. I just
Hmm.
got inundated with them. And for anyone that's had a merchant account, if you get too many chargebacks, the merchant account will call you one day and say, we are no longer allowing you to have this merchant account. And so I went from having a business that had all sorts of revenue and clients to zero overnight. But people were still joining, right? They were still trying to join and submit keywords. So I used that database, that search engine, to fuel site reference. What I did is I made submission free for people, and the exchange for it is that they were going to get marketing information as well. They were co-registering, and that's how we built it up to 220,000 subscribers. You could do that back then. Today, it would be frowned upon to do co-registration that aggressively, and it wouldn't work as well today. But it was a different world back then. So, long answer, but yes, I had two sites: Tower Search, Fed Site Reference,
Right.
which is how that business grew.
And how are you monetizing then to those 220,000, which I'm guessing were not all active subscribers?
Well, they were actually the rates were pretty good. I had a decent amount of opens on that. Obviously, the biggest struggle I had was figuring out how to send out email in an efficient way because we didn't have the email service providers that we have today, right? And it was really expensive if you wanted to use one with a list of 220,000 subscribers. But I was how I was monetizing was just through ads, and then I would backfill with affiliate. Right. So I sent out 3 emails a week to the entire list and then 2 dedicated emails for sponsors. So 5 emails a week. Right. So on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we would send out all the articles. There would be sponsored spots within there. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there would be an email that we would send on behalf of one of our advertisers. If an advertiser wasn't there, I would backfill with an affiliate from Commission Junction or something like that, and was able
Right.
to do pretty well with that.
Right.
So
Yeah, this
yeah,
second one actually sounds like it went pretty well, right? And
yeah,
what was kind of why did you decide to sell it in 2005, if I recall correctly?
yeah. I decided to sell in 2005 because I thought it would be a good feather in my cap, and I was impatient and all that. All the wrong reasons, frankly. I probably shouldn't have sold it. The other aspect the other reason I sold it is that I quickly realized that. Um, I reached this point, and businesses have this point, right, where you start them on your own and you can do so much on your own. And then it reaches a point where you need to bring somebody else on. But in order to bring somebody on, you have to start paying money out to them, right? And I was making enough money to live my life comfortably, but bringing somebody on would have put me below that level where I could do that. So it was what do you do? Do you bring someone on and try and live for a few months? Now look at today, I would know how to figure that out and figure out how to make that pivot. I didn't really know how to do that, and so for a lot of reasons, I thought let me put it up for sale. So only after 2.5 years of owning it, I put it up for sale.
Right, right. And what was your experience like selling the business? I'm guessing you had a bit of trouble that kind of inspired you later on to try and fix that for others and make the experience a bit better.
Yeah, I learned pretty quickly that the brokerage world isn't really known for its honesty or good work. I'm not saying anyone lied to me, but when I put the business up for sale, I did hire an advisor, a broker, to help me with it. They initially quoted me $375,000 for the site, 350 or 375, somewhere in there. The first offer I got was $75,000. When I heard 350 or 375, whatever they quoted, I thought, really? That much? Wow, that seems like a lot. I can't imagine somebody would pay that much for this. And of course, no one did pay for that. I also found that I was doing 90% of the work. Now, today I understand why that is, right? I understand that, as an advisor, when I help a client, they need to do some work because they know their business, right? I need information from them. But they didn't do anything. Like they really didn't do anything to help me out other than email their list and put it up on Biz by Sell and then take some phone calls. Um, they also didn't really understand the dynamics behind an online business, like what makes for a good SEO profile, or what are sustainable sources of traffic for that, and is the monetization rate good? What are the opportunities for growing, and can they speak to that? Like they never spoke to the opportunities for growth for that business. So yeah, they had the business listed for 3 or 4 months, and just I had some calls, had some really bad offers, said no to those, and then I told them that I was done, that I needed to make some pivots because I had a redesign coming out, and um, ended up just taking the business off the market. But about 8 months later, one of the buyers that had looked at it reached out to them and said, I do want to buy it. And so they reached back out to me. He made a good enough offer that it was worth taking. And we did 30 days of due diligence in which I didn't hear from him at all. It was the weirdest due diligence ever. And sure enough, they closed. And so, yeah, I didn't sell for that much. I sold for 165,000. And I thought immediately I would turn around and start up a new business, but realized it's harder than you think. So,
So you went
um,
into an even harder business and decided to start brokerage.
well, I started some other content sites. I had a project that I was really excited about. I really, I saw, boy, I started a few projects. I started a home brewing forum for those that like to brew their own beer. Found out that it's really hard to monetize because no one was online in the home brewing world at the time. I started a forum for people that were in debt and wanted to get out of debt. So it was a place for them to share their tips and tricks and educate each other. And one of the key parts about it was it had AdSense revenue sharing. So I would rotate in people's codes. So as they're trying to get out of debt by participating, they could earn money from giving advice. Um, it was taken off, but it was just way too long of a runway. It was about a year after I sold that my a good friend said he wanted to sell his web hosting company, and so I dropped everything and pursued that because that actually paid pretty immediately
Right,
versus everything
right.
else, which would pay off in a few years.
And how did that go? What were like some expectations or maybe some things you didn't expect to happen?
I mean, boy, the difficulties there was that I didn't really know how to price it properly. You can get comps, right? You can take a look at like biz buy sell. You can order a comparable report, but that's not the best data possible. And the other thing is just, after you've done this for a while, you learn what buyers expect, and you learn what they're looking for, what questions they're going to ask. And frankly, so I have this discussion all the time with potential sellers. They think that the value of a broker, somebody like myself, is my contact with buyers. Let me just disavow you of that notion right now. That's not the value that a broker brings. Anybody can find buyers, right? Just list it on Biz Buy Sell. You'll get buyers coming to you asking about your business. Where the value of a broker comes in is understanding how to prepare a business and how to present a business in a way that doesn't get you absolutely beaten down in that process. And so, trying to sell my buddy's business was difficult because I didn't have the same Rolodex of buyers. So I did have to rely on places like Biz Buy Sell, which is okay. And we had lots of conversations. But then people were asking questions that I didn't have any idea what the answer was to, right? And so there was a lot of newness, things I'd never dealt with before, and that was a challenge. That was a big challenge. We had trouble finding a buyer. We ended up finding one and negotiating a good deal, but then, there's lots of movements during the process of selling a business. There's finding a buyer, and once you get that offer, you think that you're doing great, but that offer means nothing unless it closes. Then you have to go through due diligence, which might be the most difficult part of the process. So we had to go through that, and I was navigating through that with him. Then you have to negotiate the final agreement. That could be very, very difficult, and that's when tensions rise. And what people forget, or what they don't understand, is the process crescendos with stress the closer you get to closing, right? So when you start out, it's stressful, it's exciting. When you get that offer, it's exciting and a little bit of stress, and then you get the due diligence, and now it starts getting annoying and frustrating because it digs deep, and you're constantly getting document requests, and then you get to the negotiating the final agreements, and now there's tension, right? Because they're asking for
Right.
this, they want you to make this representation or warranty, and what's going on, and you feel like you're not getting the best price possible anymore. The business has changed, so it crescendos towards the end. And I remember this deal. We had we had an argument 2 days before closing over a fairly minor amount of money. Let me see if I can figure out the math off the top of my head. It was less than 5% of the purchase price, and we were going to have the deal fall apart over less than 5% of the purchase price. I was just like, this is insane. I can't believe
I
that we're doing
think
this.
I think Walker talks about this in his book Buy Then Build, which to anyone listening I would highly, highly recommend. So I read it about a month back, and in my opinion, it's one of the top books that I've read this year, and I read a lot. So definitely highly recommended. But what I'm trying to say is that he mentions this, how a broker kind of acts as like a therapist the longer that the process gets, because as the buyer is more excited to actually buy, but also nervous because of the money commitment. The seller, kind of the same thing, excited about the money, but then again, he's going to be kind of giving away the asset that he built up. So,
Yeah, when you're selling a business, especially more a higher value business, like let's say that you're selling a business for $5 million, you're naturally going to bring in a group of advisors. But the important thing to understand is most of the advisors that are working for you are not going to work to get the deal done. They actually can provide impediments. For example, an attorney. You've hired an attorney to look out for your liabilities, right? And so what their goal is to protect you. And by nature of selling a business, that's a risky proposition. And so they're going to give advice which may not be in the best interest of the deal, but really just in the best interest of your protection. An accountant is going to do a lot of the same things, and other advisors are going to do the same things. The broker is the one person there to try and help you get the deal done. And so, yes, he's absolutely right. As you get closer to the end of the deal, we do become therapists in many cases. We do become punching bags sometimes, right? So the buyer's mad at the seller, or the seller's mad at the buyer. And so who are they going to take it out on? Us. We're in the middle. And that's okay. That's why we get paid. You know, we're there to be that punching bag, to be that therapist, to be that sounding board, to be that neutral person, to help provide some clarity, because we've been here, we've done that, and we have this sort of 10,000-foot view to try and keep everybody focused. You know, I've seen people want to blow up deals over a 3-year non-compete versus a 2-year non-compete. And so trying to bring that client back to, what are your goals in this? Like, if that is really that big of a deal, yes, let's walk away. Right. But when we initially talked about what are your goals in an exit, what are they? Let's go back to that, and let's think about this logically, and try and help you get through that, because we don't have the emotion in it. And I just can't emphasize enough. If you've never sold a business before, you'll be surprised at the amount of emotion that goes into it, and buy as well. You'll be surprised at the amount of emotion that goes into it, and how much that can cloud your vision. So I don't want to sit here and say we're some sort of magic workers, or that our only work is really therapists. We're also analyzers and financial analysts and marketers and writers. There's a lot of things that we do, but one of the key aspects is being able to know those friction points before they come up, and then be able to massage them and help resolve those, with the buyer and the seller having a great relationship. That's, by the way, you started with the fact that I bought back the business that I had originally sold. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I had a bad relationship with the person who bought my business. But the fact is, I had a great relationship with him. We met up several
Mhm,
times afterwards. So,
mhm. And just to conclude on that story, what was kind of the reason that you decided to buy it back, and how did that end up playing out?
yeah. So a gentleman by the name of Nick bought the business from me. He ran it for several years, did a good job with it, and it was part of a larger group of businesses that he owned. And a few years after he bought it, he decided he was going to sell it, and so he came to me to sell it, which was fun. I was like, "Oh, this is great! I get to sell my own business twice." And so I helped him find a buyer. We found a buyer, closed that transaction, and the buyer who acquired it, his background was, he owned a lot of salon training schools, right? So you want to become somebody who cuts hair, styles hair, does all of these things. You have to go to a training school for that. And he owned a bunch of those. And he thought, I want to try an online business. So he bought this business that I originally started. And about 3 or 4 months into it, he called me and said, "This is not for me. I do not like the online world. I want to get in my car. I want to go to physical locations. I want to deal with people. I want to see what I have. I want out of this." And I told him, I said, you're going to take a hit. You can't just turn around and sell it this quickly. And look at his numbers; things had fallen off a cliff. Like, he just didn't do a good job with it. His heart wasn't in it. It wasn't right for him. Not his fault, just a bad fit. And he came back to me and said, "I'm fine. I'll take a hit. It'll be a tax write off. It's an education. I'm okay with it." And he threw out a number that he was willing to take. And I took a step back. I'm like, "Really? You would take that?" I said, "Yeah. I don't want it on my plate anymore." I said, "At that price, I might actually personally be interested. Are you okay with selling it to me for that?" So what's really important here is he put the price out. I didn't. And I just thought, I was like, I'll take this. And I thought I could use it as a lead generation tool for Quiet Light Brokerage, and it'd be nice to nice to have a business that I owned in the past. But it ended up becoming a distraction for me. I owned it for a year, and then I put it to rest after a
Right,
year
right.
and closed it
Did
down.
you sell it or just close it down?
I just closed it down that time. The reason I closed it down is, when I started, there was a lot of businesses, a lot of companies like what I was doing at about the same level of quality of content, writing about SEO and marketing. Where things ended up, when I bought it again, is we had the Moz.coms of the world. We had Aaron Wall doing really exceptional content at the time. We had Search Engine Journal doing exceptional content at the time, in a much more robust way than I was doing. And so it
Right.
became pretty clear that I either had to up the game significantly with that business, or shut it down. And I thought shutting it down was a better thing to do. So, um, Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
bother selling it.
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And today, do you still do any online business investing? If so, do you prefer to build or buy?
Yeah, good question. I've bought a few businesses, not many. I bought a suite of e-commerce businesses a few years ago, very very small transaction, and I learned that I hate e-commerce. It's kind of ironic. We sell a majority of our stuff as e-commerce. We're really good at selling it, but it's for me to run it. No, thank you. I'm not the logistical person. I don't like to figure out logistics of shipping and negotiating rates and stuff like that. Some people love doing that. I don't. It's too tedious for me. So I sold that shortly after I bought it, about a year after I bought it, and just considered that an education in the world of e-commerce. And then I bought a dating site a few years ago, so I still own that and enjoy that. That's my retreat from Quiet Light. I've been doing this, since 2007, and so burnout is real for entrepreneurs. It's my way of
Sure.
escaping a little bit and focusing on something different. And then I always have things that I think about starting, and I might actually take steps 1 through 3, but then I quickly realize I don't have time for steps 5 through 7. So, um, as far as what do I prefer, um, I think I prefer starting just because I enjoy the small aspects of it. But if I was serious about it from a revenue standpoint, I would 10 times out of 10 buy. It
Right.
just makes you read buy them build, so you understand the arguments, right?
Right. Right.
The arguments behind it are so clear. So if I stopped doing Quiet Light Brokerage and I was looking for my next business from a money standpoint, I would absolutely buy every single time.
Right. And just on that question, I wanted to know what are some of the top ways that you kind of see people that buy the business kind of implement different strategies that they implement to just get those quick wins, right? So naturally, I come from like an SEO background, and in SEO you would fix up the technical SEO, add links, but I'm kind of wondering in a more general sense for an online business.
Well, that's exactly what we see, right? So everybody has their individual strengths and weaknesses, and so what I typically advise people who are looking to buy is start with that, understand what your strengths is or the strength of your team, and then look for the businesses that are weak in that area. That might be logistics. That might be maybe you have a warehouse ready, and it makes sense for you to absorb new product because you have the capacity without adding significant cost. That's a common play. CRO, conversion rate optimization. If you're really good at that, that's a really common area that I think you can find a lot of easy wins because most people know they should do CRO. Very few people do it, and so
Right.
I think there's a lot of opportunity with that. But that's where it really does vary from one team to the next. What we see, there's groups out there. Thrasio would be a group that's doing this with Amazon businesses, right? They're funded company doing active rollups in Amazon because they know how to optimize ASINs, and they're looking for a particular type of ASIN to acquire. They acquire that, and they're able to make good money on that in the long term for it. We have another buyer who buys Amazon businesses. He looks at it from an expansion possibility. He specifically buys businesses that he believes he can expand to overseas because they become really good at that, and that becomes a really easy growth path. We have another buyer that buys e-commerce businesses that are not on Amazon because they're very good at SEO, and they know that they can do similar to like what you're saying, right? They can maximize that through technical SEO, adding links, content, et cetera, et cetera. Content sites, same thing. We typically see people implement a lot of SEO based strategies or maybe email marketing strategies, or maybe somebody's really good at social media advertising and the different things there. So, um, long answer, short answer is find your strength, look for the business that's weak in that area, and that can be a really good pickup.
Right. My next question would kind of just be the opposite. What are the most common mistakes people make? And if we just kind of turn that around, it would just be not knowing where your strengths are, I would say.
Well, and not having a plan. I think that tends to be the biggest mistake. Not having a plan and not being patient. I remember dealing with a buyer who was under LOI with one of our listings, and the process was not going well. My client was being terrible. I'll just be very honest. He was being terrible during the process. He was being unfair. He had turned into somebody else. Like it just was. it turned from a good deal to a bad deal pretty quickly. And I had a conversation with him about, do you want to go through with this? Because my client was being belligerent and mean, frankly, and unfair. And his response to me was, Mark, I've already had 3 offers with your company and I pulled out of all of those. I need to prove to you guys that I can close a deal. Well, that's a terrible reason to do a deal, right? Don't prove to me that you can do a deal, or to yourself that you can do a deal. Patience is your friend when it comes to buying a business, because you don't want to make the wrong move there. Um, Having a plan, know how the customers are acquired. This is one of the key things that you have to do, right? Know the customer acquisition path. And yeah, other than that, I guess those would be the biggest mistakes. Yeah, those would be the big. I'll stop with
Right.
that. I could keep going, but I'll leave with those.
Right, right. And any success stories, without, of course, revealing the names or the companies? Any success stories that like have happened this year, or maybe in the past 6 or 12 months, kind of really surprised you, that maybe took a little bit of a different approach to what you would normally see,
Oh boy, I wasn't prepared for that
without
question.
without putting you on the spot.
I mean, we're fortunate that we do get to see a lot of success stories. Is it really surprising for us? No, because I know where these buyers are coming from, and what they're doing. With COVID, I think that's been maybe our biggest surprises. I sold a business last year in the toys and games niche, and I spoke to that buyer recently, and he told me that his sales right now are like Christmas on steroids. It was just absolutely exploding sales. So that's a little bit of an unexpected surprise. We can't really look at those people and say they had some sort of secret that
Right,
that
right.
caused it, or in their approach, just more good timing than anything else. Um, yeah, no, I don't know if I can think of a success story due to a unique approach. I think the people that have the consistent success stories that we hear about, they're the people that have the plans and a method. They know what they're looking for, and it, you can tell the difference between a professional buyer and somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. The professional buyers have a plan, and day one of ownership, they're working that plan, and putting that in place, and they do really really well. Um, that's not to say that you can't do it otherwise. There are buyers out there who want to buy and hold, right? They just want to buy and hold assets, and that can work as well. You don't always have to be growth oriented, but the biggest eye popping, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that, would be those that knew exactly what they were doing. And we see some of those flipped. Those are always fun when they come back to us and sell a second time at a higher price. It's always fun to see that.
Right, especially the difference.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. This was not in the past 6 to 12 months. This was 2010. It was a directory that I sold, and I initially sold it for, I think, $375,000, and then 2 years later we sold it for over $700,000. So
Wow.
that buyer obviously did really really well with his investment, because he not only just the capital appreciation, but the money that he made during that process was significant.
Right, right. And just before we wrap up, one more question: what would be some of the best ways for someone who, let's say, owns a content site or just any kind of online business, really, to just make the sale process easier, or to maybe kind of make it easier for the buyer to actually say, okay, I'm interested in this. Other than like preparing a growth plan, I know that it's a good one. Having a lot of financial data and just making everything accessible. Anything else, maybe?
Yeah, so we preach what we call the 4 pillars of value, which are risk, growth, transferability, and documentation. So with the risk side, making sure that you have your bases covered there. Are you reliant on a vendor? Are you reliant on one source of traffic? And doing what you can to spread that out, right? This will increase the value of your business. It'll also make it more appealing for a buyer, pretty much right off the bat. So, for example, if you're completely reliant on SEO traffic, build out your email list and have that as your second leg of traffic. You'll thank me if you actually do that. That's just a good plan to do. If you're selling physical products, making sure that you have more than one vendor to create those products would be another example. The second pillar being growth, would be having that growth plan in place. How can you get from where you are today to where this could be in the future, and how realistic is it going to be to get there? The transferability portion is all about writing out standard operating procedures, making sure that you have your items documented, making sure that you're not reliant on any one person in your business, including yourself, right? So we see this with content sites. Let's say in the medical area, you might have a doctor who has a solution or a method or something. And so what do? They immediately have the appeal to authority. I am a doctor. Here's why you should trust this. Well, now this business is very difficult to sell because people are buying it because you're a doctor. And now after you sell it, what does the new owner get to say? They don't get to say, I'm a doctor. So having an eye towards, can somebody else run this business? And how do I make that transition really easy? And the last is the documentation. Make it, this is completely under your control. Have really good, clean financials. Hire a bookkeeper. Don't try and do it on your own if you don't know what you're doing. But keep track of contracts. Diagram out your business. I recommend this to everybody. Diagram out your business. Who's involved in it, and what do they do for you? And what does that look like? You might think that sounds very corporatized, but you'll be surprised at what sort of shape your business takes when you do that. And you'll start to see what you personally value in the business as well. I did that with Quiet Light Brokerage recently, and the number one area where we spend money is on our team of advisors, which makes sense. That's what we put forward first, right? We put forward the experience of our advisors, like the Walker Diable, who has a best-selling book on Amazon for over a year. He's an all-star. I want him part of my team. So that's where we put most of our time. But where I saw that where we don't have a team developed and I want to be better at is on the marketing side, right? So that's a focus this year. I'm going to build up that department quite a bit more. And that only came as a result of me diagramming the business. So yeah, documentation, document everything that you can. The more organized you are from a documentation standpoint, it just makes the whole process easier and it adds value to your business. So
Right,
totally
right.
worth doing.
And in terms of documentation, it would be okay to just keep like a Excel file, note down all the expenses, the revenues, profits, especially for like a content site where you don't really have like a separate bookkeeper just for that site.
We always recommend use professional accounting software. In fact, my business partner said he's going to create T-shirts that says Excel is not accounting software.
Okay,
Look, you can do it for your own purposes, but I would highly recommend, take some time as an entrepreneur and understand the basic principles of accounting. Because as entrepreneurs, we love our data. We all understand the need to understand the analytics behind our site. The accounting system that's been developed and is implemented across the world has been developed over hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's designed for the very purposes of giving you insights into your business. Once you understand how to read financial statements, you understand businesses that much more deeply, and you want to identify where the opportunities are that much more quickly, and where the risks are as well. So I would highly recommend, you should be on accounting software. It can be QuickBooks, it can be Xero, it can be Peachtree. I don't care what you use, but use a proper accounting system. If you don't want to become a bookkeeper, hire one, but hire a good one, and then take a very basic course online, or study up, or just spend some time every week reading. How do you understand a profit and loss statement? What's the difference between accrual and cash basis accounting? How do you read a balance sheet? What's the statement of cash flows? These are basic concepts, not very difficult to understand, but once you understand them and you're comfortable with them, you'll learn to love your financials because there's a lot of good data in there.
right, right. In terms of just the general of everything we covered, any good resources apart from your podcast, of course, your YouTube channel, and Walker's book, Buy it and Build. Both will be linked in the description for anyone watching or listening. Anything else maybe that you would like to add?
Harvard has a book that they put out. Harvard Business School put out a book on buying a business, and so they're aimed a little bit higher than what Walker was looking at in terms of total deal size. But it's also a very good book. They've done a lot of really good work there. Other content that's out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. Richard Patey does a good job from flipping websites. You mentioned him at the beginning. I would recommend checking out his stuff as well. And then last, anyone that's interested in this, check out the different groups that are out there talking about this. Rhodium would be one of them. Rhodium group, a really good group of people talking about business growth, but also acquisitions. So I would recommend them as well to talk to
Rodium,
people.
where exactly is that? Is it like a website or group? The
They do have a
group?
website. It's a mastermind group, but they also have a Facebook group, which you don't have to be a part
Right.
of the mastermind to be a part of. So very, very good people on that forum, and a diverse group of people there too.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the podcast. Just one last question. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to sell a business, of course, they take a look at quietlightbrokerage.com. if they have any questions, like do you have like a email that you'd like to share or anything else?
Sure. Mark at quietlightbrokerage.com. That's Mark with a K. And it doesn't even have to be about selling the business. If you want to get a sense for what it might be worth, even if you have no interest in selling, love to have that discussion. Or if you just want to talk shop about what we're seeing, we enjoy talking to entrepreneurs. We're entrepreneurs ourselves, so it's always good to connect with fellow online entrepreneurs.
Cool. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Mark will be more than happy to help. Cool. Thanks again for taking the time. This was super cool. And yeah, hopefully we can do another one again down the road.
All right. Hey, Benjamin, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.